welcome to Ahead of the Curve. I am Jonathan Gellner, and thank you so much for joining us today. This episode is brought to you by Athletes Brand. Athletes Brand works with pro athletes to design some awesome t-shirts and then donate proceeds to a charity. But what really caught my attention was the amount of effort they put into the charity component of their products. Athletes Brand educates about the cause, say what the money I'm spending is going toward within the cause, and then follow up with how the cause actually spent the money afterwards. For this month's t-shirt, they wanted to give a big thank you to those who have been grossly undervalued during these times. Athletes Brand partnered with Tyler Saladino of the Korean Baseball League and the Brave of Heart Fund to raise money to help families on the front lines during COVID-19 to get through their unfortunate circumstances of losing a loved one. It will cover meal costs, funeral costs, grief counseling, rent and mortgage, and more. Because the families are in many ways just as much a hero as the medical professionals who lost their lives. Let's honor those that sacrificed their lives for us by giving some support to their families. You can snag the baseball-inspired t-shirt that says thank you in tons of different languages for the next few weeks at athletesbrand.com. And your money will go directly to those families in need. Simple as that. On today's show, we have on Ryan Cienko, catching coordinator for the LA Dodgers. Ryan was a catcher at the University of Iowa, playing professionally for the Texas Rangers, Chicago White Sox, and in independent ball, where he was an all-star. His current responsibilities include catching philosophies and drills, deciphering receiving metrics, blocking philosophies and drills, throwing philosophies and drills, coordinating player plans, working with the research and development department, and traveling to all affiliates to work with the catchers. So on the show, we discuss almost all of that. But we dig into how he evaluates catchers, what data and trends we can look for, and we go through several different drills and thought processes with how we can set up catchers to maximize their potential on and off the field. Here is Ryan Cienko. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jonathan.
Absolutely. And I know that you being a great catching guy for a long time, and we're going to get to talk a little bit about your high school coaching days, which is I think makes us all better coaches if we can coach in high school for sure. I may be a little bit biased there, but after hearing your ABCA talk a couple of months ago now, which seems like a couple of years ago, but it was super, super good. And I've since kept up with you since then. And so I'm really excited to get to talk with you and to grow our relationship today and get to learn from you. But for our listeners who want to get to know you a little bit better, can you give us a short snapshot of your baseball background and then why you decided to hop into coaching?
Sure. First, I grew up outside of Chicago, Elgin, Illinois. Played like everyone else, kind of through the youth ranks and went to the University of Iowa. Played 8 years in the minor leagues with the Rangers and the White Sox, all kind of, lackluster and all of that. But even from a young age, I knew at some point I'd love to coach because just the passion that I've had for the game, instilled long ago. And as soon as I got done playing, I actually started working for Tom House with the National Pitching Association right when he first started that. Tommy and I, traveled the country doing pitching clinics and that kind of stuff. And we had our pitching lab. And honestly, if Tom wouldn't have taken the pitching coach job at USC, I probably would have a totally different career path at this point. Since the day he left was the day that I quit and started my own catching company, Catch and Throw. After that, coached high school, coached travel ball for quite a long time, and actually coached Jack McDowell's sons in our travel organization, and then coached against him quite a bit. He and I were in the same kind of conference, smaller schools with my first head job, and had a really good relationship with Jack. And then Jack took a job with the Dodgers, and 2015, I think, or 14, the winter meetings were in San Diego. He said, "Hey, I might have a possible spot, on my staff. Would you be interested?" And of course, kind of jumped at it, and he and I hung out down at downtown San Diego, and um, actually had a quick like 2-minute interview, I guess you would call it, with Gabe Kapler at that point, where he told me there wasn't anything available. And from there, turned into just some side conversations about receiving and pitch framing and all that stuff, and went through kind of a month-long personal interview with Gabe before the job materialized with the Dodgers. So it's kind of the short of it. But this is my 6th year with the Dodgers. It's been an incredible run that we've had with the guys. So it's kind of the short of it.
Oh, I love that. And I love that. Again, I love to hear people's background and where they came from, because I think that it just explains so much of what we do currently and why we do different things. And so let's go ahead and jump 2 feet in, and let's talk about catching for good reason. And
Right.
so let's talk about how you evaluate catchers, because again, I'm trying to learn from you. I am not a catching coach this year, and so I'm going to pretend like I'm going to be one next year. So I'm going to be over here taking notes, and let's just start with that. So let's say that you guys are either potentially looking at guys in the draft or free agents, and maybe you're even looking at the amateur ranks, just for whatever reason. But what are some things that stand out that good catchers really do? And then kind of what's your evaluation process look like?
First, I looked for guys that are athletic. I think the position has changed to where it is no longer the big bodied, slow catcher that could hit for a little bit of power. It's not necessarily that anymore, and it's a dynamic position. And if you've looked in the draft with the guys that have been taken in the higher rounds in the last 4 or 5 years, you're seeing a lot more athlete rather than just skill as somebody that's going to sit back there and be able to take the durability of it. I think the performance staffs that I can only speak to our club, but the performance staff and the training staff that we have uh, and treat any kind of body issues as long as they're an athlete. And I think that's the number one thing. I do go out every year to help our scouting department. I don't know if you'd call it cross-checking the catchers, but they give me a list of guys. I've seen up to I think it's up to 18 guys. So when I'm traveling the first month, I do a lot of kind of scouting, and then go out and then see our guys. I kind of mix the two together, and I've seen a lot of dudes that can really hit and athletes. If you were going to say like what are the two biggest things, I would say just be a great athlete and be able to hit. The bat will always win no matter what on any team. So we've got to make sure that this position is not just a catch only position. And past that, I would look for the flexibility, the mobility. Can the person move within the space that they have to work in? And then from there, it's all just about like evaluating, okay, this is what he does really well. This is what maybe there's room for growth, and so on and so forth. So it's a very short list of things that I really look for. The intangibles are the toughest, right? Is being able to call a game, which really the only place that's really, really happening is in the professional level. So, you've got to look to see if they're, subjectively look to see if you think that the guy can handle the pace of the game, and, potentially be able to identify hitters' weaknesses and pitcher strengths.
No, that's perfect. I love that. And earlier in the show, I mentioned that you were a high school coach and you said nine years.
I think it was 9 years.
That's awesome. And a lot of our listeners are in that realm. So the audience would be kind of some amateurs, a lot of high school, a lot of college, some professional, depending on the episode, which for you, I'm sure that it will be more of the latter. But for the amateur coaches, now, again, you've gotten to see firsthand of what we can do a better job of. So in the catching world, for amateurs, what is something that you can help with, or maybe not? Let me not phrase it like that, but what is something that you see that you think can be improved upon from amateur catchers?
It's a great question. Honestly, I think it's giving the guys freedom. Um, I write this in a lot of reports that I go see guys is, once he's given the freedom to do X, Y, and Z, I think we'll see, A, B, and C pop out a little bit better. The freedom of stances, I think we're seeing that a lot more in the last, say, 3 or 4 years. The freedom to be creative, you'll see that with the way guys throw. That's kind of the freedom that they get in game. But with the ball manipulation and everything else, I think if we allow the guys, let me go backwards. If the coaches allow themselves to be open to the newer way of doing things rather than the conventional way of doing things or the fundamental way of doing things, I think that's where we're going to see the most growth. These young men that are out there right now are on Twitter, they're on Instagram, they watch the game 100 times, more specifically for that position, and they see what the best guys do. So they want to be creative, the same way that we all did it with our stances back in the day, just because that was the only person you'd really see on TV is the hitter, right? That's who they would focus on more. So I think as coaches, if they allow the catchers to have that kind of flexibility and freedom to try things and be open to trial and error, right? Where we get in trouble as coaches of catchers specifically is when the ball gets by us, like bad things only happen. There's no good outcome when the ball goes by us. So, if you look at infielders and stuff, they're going to make errors. There's a lot of chances that they have. The ball's all over the place. And it's not overlooked by any means, by any kind of infield coach. But there is there's a ball and the catcher, misses it. And, I've heard from a million coaches, it's like, if I don't notice them, then it's good. Well, I think we should be noticed for the amount of work that these guys do, especially now in the age of huge velo and zero command. Every kid at almost every level. I mean, my son is 9. I see some kids throwing gas at Little League, for them to be able to handle that at such a young age, both offensively and defensively, I think is commendable, because that's a piece that wasn't there a long time ago. It was command over velocity, and I think we've seen a shift to where it's a velocity over command or even control. And if these kids are able to handle some of that, they are, they're going to have some success, but they're also going to mess up. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's just part of the game. And, we take a lot of crap, for lack of a better word, as catchers when the pitchers don't have command. If you want to find a really good catcher, you're going to see pitchers that have better command of the baseball. And, until the pitching gets to that point, you're going to have a young man or a grown man back there that's playing defense rather than being offensive with what he's trying to do.
No, that's a great point, and I love that. And it seems like a lot of the things that you're talking about involves giving them some individual freedom within that, and I'm sure that you have to, being the catching coordinator, not being able to see guys on a single daily basis, and you're working with those guys. But you played in pro ball, and you went to high school, and then you came back to pro ball. And so a question that I really like is you get these guys, and they're 25, 30 years old. They've done certain things a certain way for their entire career. They've obviously been successful. They're in the top 1% of baseball players in the world. So how are you going about, how do you approach helping them? Because we want to, that's why we got into the game of coaching, but we also don't want to overstep our bounds and try and do too much to where they regress or we turn them off completely and they don't want to listen to us. So for you, what's that fine line of, okay, here are some things that this player can work on. Here's some freedom that they have within that. And then how do you maneuver, not necessarily the conversation, but in your mind, how do you go over these things before you talk with the player just to make sure that they know that you're in it for their best interest?
It's a two-part kind of answer as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
The number one thing with any player as a coach is building the relationship, right? Gaining the trust to build that relationship. If we don't have a great relationship and communicate really well with the guy, we are probably not going to get the most out of them. So if you asked me this question 5 years ago, I would say, well, we're going to have the analytics. We're going to have, there's certain things that we know that can help him. He's either going to do it or he's not. Over time, I've personally learned that it's much more about the relationship and the communication, and asking more questions rather than telling. And honestly, showing the guy, whatever age he is, if he's a kid or if he's a grown man, that you're in it with him, right? This has nothing to do with my career other than the coaching piece, right? Then I'm a coach. I'm here to help you. And if I can get the guys, or any of our staff can get the guys to understand that we're here solely for them, it does open the lines of communication up a lot easier. And honestly, if they don't believe us, if our relationship isn't strong, we can show them the same drill 100 days in a row and they're not going to get anything out of it. As soon as we can make it relatable to how it's going to help them, why we're asking them to try things, etc., like, then we have a chance. You just don't know what the guy's going to be able to do unless he's fully invested in doing it. If they're halfway going into it, I just don't see it being something, he might progress slightly, see the gains that he's going to need, getting to the major leagues. The second piece is with the older players. It's more about waiting for them to ask what they can do, or what do we see, or, what do you got? I mean, that's the question I get a lot of times from an older guy. Say, like, hey, what do you got? Okay, well, if you're ready for it, then here's a few things. And the luxury that we have in pro ball versus youth, high school, travel ball, we have time. We have tons of time. So even if a guy is, 27 and he's near the end of his career and he's holding on, we still have time over that season to prove that something will go right for him, making, certain changes. If it's a young kid, I've got 5-6 years to where, okay, if we start this process now, in 5 or 6 years, you're going to be more than ready for the major leagues, to compete at Dodger Stadium, for Doc. Opposed to a high school or youth level where it's like, next week I need you to be able to do this, and we got to win this tournament. We need to win these games to get into the tournament. Sure. We always talk about it being a crock pot environment versus a microwave environment, and like I said, the luxury we have in that crock pot is you throw the guy in, add some seasoning, and every so often you just give it a sniff test and go like, okay, it's going pretty well. Look at it. Wow, that's looking really good. Give it a little bit more time, it's going to be great. And honestly, I think that's the best part of our job, is that you're not going to ask a guy to just put Band-Aids on things and perform. We're going to get with you and, dive in there with you in the trenches for a long time, knowing that it's going to, have these ebbs and flows to where it's going to be great, it's going to be horrible. And that's kind of the curse of analytics to us sometimes, is that the guys see their numbers, they see what's going on, and they don't necessarily always trust the process, right? Because if the process is in place and it's strong, we can trust that over time we're going to get the results that we'd like. And again, that goes back to our relationship with the guy.
Sure. And you've mentioned analytics a couple of times. And I think that it's something that obviously over the last 5 or 6 years, which it has just exploded. And so let's go back just a little bit, because again, it started off to where you've got all of these different numbers and we're trying to figure out what it means. Probably still are. But how do you take, especially from the catching side, because again, I'm not real familiar with a ton of the catching metrics, but let's say that I'm just going to pretend that there's a lot of different things that you guys could look for as far as catching goes. And so maybe you can explain to me a couple of different things, because, obviously I'm new to this, but I would like to know how you take those and then simplify them into things that make sense to the player. Because I'm completely assuming here that there's a lot of things that they could look at. And I think you alluded to that a little bit, but how do you do a good job of filtering that information to your players?
First, it's transparency, right? They see everything. Um, Back, say 5 years ago, 5 years ago, when we're getting all these numbers, we're getting the raw data. There wasn't really a system. It was more like, hey, this says this should have been a higher percentage strike than this one. And here's a whole bunch of numbers, and it would be sheets of numbers for every single game. Um, Now we've deciphered that in different ways where it's actually useful. But back then it was like, here's what we have. And the reason that I particularly wanted that transparency was because if they're hitting poorly and they're talking about, hey, you're not slugging enough, or your ISO is this, we'd like it to be here, or your WRC plus is right. We can talk about any stat, or even your batting average, right? The guys know what that is, and they can go on Fangraphs and look it up. In the early days of these, not early days, but earlier days of the analytics with the catching, they had no idea what they were being graded upon. So, okay, you had a good game or you had a bad game, and here's kind of a score. Well, what does that score mean? I think the toughest part for guys is they have to in what they do, and they work their butts off every single day. That is, when they have a poor day, they know that it affects the game much more than if they had a poor game as a hitter, to where they just, they went 0 for 3 with a walk, and it's a subpar game for them. If they have that same kind of game score with the catching, it really does affect the game in a negative way. So the hardest part for us over time has been to get the guys to not overreact to the daily scores. Daily scores are, in a way, they're just there to tell you, like, hey, that was a good game, that was a bad game, more than anything, in my opinion. What we try to find and what we've added over time is just some more data points to tell us where these trends are going. If the trend is on sinkers to the glove side in a specific quadrant is the problem, then it just allows us to work smarter in those areas. If a hitter is chasing sliders, they're probably going to get the slider machine out and have them work on pitch recognition. It's virtually the same thing. We're just going to go and target his work to the areas that he needs the most work, and then also work on his general timing, because as a catcher, we don't have the luxury of taking like a hitter does. So if we don't like it, we still have to go get it and try to make it, as good as we can, make it look as good as we can, to where a hitter can go like, oh, I blinked, I didn't see it, I'm just not going to swing. And there's very little repercussions of what could happen. Like I said earlier, when the ball gets by us, nothing good happens. So we do have to be able to cover as much of the zone as possible, knowing, even though we might have called the pitch, that it could be up and away, or all of a sudden it turned into a sinker going down and in at 97, and being able to handle those things with the timing. So, the analytics just literally just tell us two things. One, is he good? And two, where can we do our work? That's the way that I like to look at those things. much less than, hey, that was a misfire. God, it was across the plate. Or, the umpire told me he missed it. Like, okay, great. That's going to happen. You know, most of my questions to the guys are, hey, here's your score. What do you have on the third one? Because I've looked at the video, or we have a link to the video. Something just didn't look right. And sometimes the answer is like, I don't know, I just kind of messed up. Great. If that's what it is, that's what it is. I mean, you're in there for thousands upon thousands of pitches. You would be an idiot and you will lose the trust of the player if you hound on every single pitch that he has to go about, his day. It's just impossible over the course of a year to stay completely perfectly locked in, say for 18,000 pitches. It's going to be tough, and they're going to blink, and they're going to have bad backgrounds, and they're going to have a pitcher that, there's a runner on third, and the pitcher's throwing the ball all over the place, and he's not worried about necessarily the strike. He's shifted more of his, bandwidth to making sure that at least he keeps it in front of him. That might be the situation that he was in, and it's not reflected necessarily in the strike probability or the game score, or what the stat sheet says, but he's doing his job. He's serving his pitching, his pitching staff or his pitcher specifically at that moment to the best of his ability. So, there's a lot of things that the numbers do tell us, but there's also a lot of things in very specific games that the numbers will never tell us. You might get a score for the block where you're losing it on the reception, and you still won the game. That's really all that matters.
I love that. And you're gonna get me going here, because I think that it's almost dangerous to try and interpret data without some context. Video is the same way, I'm sure too. And so I love that you ask. Like, I love that you ask, hey, what do you got on this, before you really do anything? Because again, they're the ones behind the plate. We're not. They're the ones in the box, and we're not. They're the ones on the mound. We're not. And so I think that's something that we could all do a better job of, is trying to understand the context before we try and interpret everything that we interpret anyways, especially. So soapbox for me, like swings you see on social media, or swings even on TV. Like, what was the pitch? What was the situation? What was going on? Like all of these different things that we don't factor into what makes a good, for a catcher, what makes a good receiver. Okay. So you mentioned that you guys have a lot of process goals, and I love that, but you also ask for the context on some of the stuff that they do well or they don't. I think that's awesome. I think it's brilliant.
I think in game is the best place for you to ask the questions. The recall of these guys is incredible. So whether it's a phone call the next day, or if I'm there, or one of the other coaches is there, and they just ask the question like, hey, what happened, that second pitch on the, to the whatever the guy's name is. And generally the guys are going to go like, wait a minute. Oh, okay. Yeah. This happened. Oh, okay. Thanks. And that should in essence be the end of it. A lot of times what would happen is, you need to do this. Well, it's already in the past. Like, I can't change that. What we can do is see, okay, here's the work we've been doing. Can you try this next inning, or next inning in the warm-ups? Can you try it? And the guys definitely, I mean, you're out there surviving when you're playing, right? So asking them to do huge changes when they know they can totally mess up the game is tough. But if we can ask them to slowly try to put it into play, and what you'll find is that they'll come back and go like, hey, did you see that on that one pitch? I did what we were working on. Awesome. That's really, that could be worth the whole trip into a city, is that aha moment that young man has. And that's the best part about being a coach, is when you can see how there's a bit of influence on the player to get better. And I think that is the best part about being a coach.
I love that. I love that a lot. And let's talk about the Dodgers culture a little bit. And like I was telling you earlier, I think I've interviewed just about every Dodgers coach in the entire just every department almost. But let's talk a little bit about the catching department specifically. And I know that this is something that you are really proud of, and that's something that you wanted me to ask you about. So I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. But talk to us a little bit about the culture there. What are you guys building? I mean, I know culture is a buzzword, but what does that look like, feel like? What is the environment like? Just kind of go all in on what that would look like on a daily basis if we got to see you guys in meetings and things like that.
It's an all-encompassing thing with us. We have our serve to lead mantra, right? That came from the task that Gabe Kapler gave us, in 2015, and Travis Barbary and Austin Chubb and myself sat down, and we just brainstormed on what was really important for our crew, for our catching corps, and the servant leadership piece kept coming up. And, we wanted to make sure that, what does that mean throughout, the all-encompassed, position of being a catcher. And, we kind of put that together and wrote a little, trying to create championship caliber men to win championships, with communication and leadership, and rolling with the punches and stuff like that. And we took it to the guys, and the guys loved it. We got with our strong mind coordinator AJ Lalonde at that time, and he got his whiteboard out, and we asked the guys, what are the core things that you like, and there's a big spread of things, and then they just sub off of all of those. And when it was all said and done, there's 30, 40 things that the guys had mentioned. And I think the best part about that is that they realized, listen, to be a complete catcher in this organization, you need to be able to do all of those things. So it is taking care of, if you're trying to learn English or you're trying to learn Spanish, it is creating really strong relationships with not only the pitchers, but then the pitching coaches, being able to communicate with both. It is the game planning, we call game calling university, right? It is learning how to identify hitters' strengths and weaknesses, and how are we going to put that together with our pitchers' strengths and weaknesses, and then how are we going to communicate that with our pitchers, the pitching coaches, and then put it in the games. So, that one little small piece we could probably talk about for 30 minutes. The guys go through public speaking training. They go through elevator speeches. We put them in uncomfortable situations, and they have to improvise, because that is part of what they're going to have to do. Now, it is getting tougher with the mound visit limitations. So that communication and that trust and that relationship piece is so much stronger now, or more important now than it ever has been. Then we can move to the physical side. Like, are they doing their prep work? Are they getting there on time? Are they, respectful of the performance staff and the training staff's time, where they're, so this serve to lead is everyone. It's not just about us. It's about serving all of our staff, all of our, fellow players, and most importantly, the organization. So that's our culture. Like, it's an all-encompassed thing. Our guys, the expectation for our guys is through the roof. To be where Will and Austin are right now in the major leagues, if you don't do all of those things, you're never going to get there. Or you need to hit like through the roof in order to get there, which is just tough, given the position. So, the great team ed aspect, I think the proudest thing, and I'm going to boast on the guys a little bit, is that I think it's of the 8 teams that we had, 6 of them were teammate of the year, voted by their peers. One level, we had catchers going in and out the whole time, and then only one level where there was a guy there consistently. Didn't really win the teammate of the year this last year. I was extremely proud of that, and I know every one of our coaches that works with the catchers was extremely proud of that, because it means that they're walking the walk, right? That they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, by serving not only their staff but then the rest of their teammates, and being respectful to the clubhouse, attendance, or the clubbies, and the weight guys, and the performance staff, and the training staff, and the manager, and the coaches. It just means that they're doing what they're supposed to. That's our expectation. So when when those expectations aren't met around here, specifically with the catchers, right? They're not going to be playing, or they won't be a part of our organization for too long. And I've told this story many times, but I don't know how many years ago. That's 4 years ago, probably now. One of the players got basically demoted and then put on timeout because he was such a bad teammate, and he had to learn how to become a good teammate. And that's the investment that the staff has put into the players, is that, listen, this month, I think he was off 5 weeks or somewhere close to that. Like, this month of your career, you're not going to, what you do on the field isn't going to make or break your career. But this month that you're going to be here working with the staff on becoming a better teammate will elevate your career. And, in order, like we've said, in order to be a catcher with the Dodgers, you've got to be a great teammate. You've got to serve your staff, and, this young man has completely changed his career path because of it. And it's awesome.
I love that. And I think that's me saying that it's important is probably understating it quite a bit, because he's going to take that and not just apply it on a field, but whatever he does for the other 30 years,
Right.
40, 50 years of his life, it's going to be something that you guys are setting him up for success there too.
I think
So,
the general culture that we have is, building stronger men builds better baseball players. And that it was an expectation a long time ago, and then passed on to Brandon Gomes, who's now an assistant GM, and then now Will Rhymes, who's our farm director. We put a lot of time. Meaning every person in PD, whether it be the performance of the training staff or the video guys, or everyone puts a ton of work into the guys to make them better men, because they do need to be better husbands and better fathers, better brothers and better sons. If they do that, then they're going to get more out of what they do as a baseball player. And we truly believe that. And I think it's been somewhat proven over the last 4 or 5 years of how our minor league players are ready for the major leagues when they get there.
that's really, really good. I know that if listeners are longtime listeners to the show, I can't count how many times that people have said that, but that's also coming from an organization who's been in the World Series several times over the last couple of years and has had one of the more successful player development departments in the world. And it just, like that, for me, hearing that from you, it means a ton, right? And I think that it's something that if you're not listening to those things that keep getting repeated over and over, then I'm a firm believer that success leaves clues. And again, you could tell that to a room full of people, and half of us are going to hear it. But it's something that I want to reiterate again, because it's just so good. Let's talk about a little bit about, just the physical aspect of catching. And I love that we, spent 30 minutes on intangibles, and we could spend an entire show on it because it is that important. But let's talk about setting up guys for success based on how their body moves. And you talked about it earlier, of just trying to understand those things so you can help them and allow some freedom within the constraints of what you think is important. But is there a way that you assess how a player moves? Do you watch video on them? Is that kind of your assessment, or what? Just to be able to again set them up to be able to receive the ball well, because the position is called catcher for a reason, because you have to receive 180 times, 200 times a game, whatever the number is. So setting them up to be able to do that well consistently is pretty important. So kind of walk us through your process with that.
Yeah, I agree. Everything you just said. The hardest part is making sure the guys are both physically and mentally ready to handle, the opportunity of catching 150, 180, right? Very few times. I think I want to say the most we ever had was like 180, and that was like a 16 inning game or something. That's just like an awful game where it's just back and forth, no one could get anybody out kind of game. I want to say the least amount was like 46. It was like a 78 pitch complete game by John Ritchie in like 2005, 2015 in Rancho. Kyle Farmer had that. It was like 46 pitches he received on the day, right? In either one of those, you're not going to have a good score. Like there's not enough opportunities, or there's way too many opportunities. All we have to do is make sure that the guys are in positions to handle who's going to be throwing the ball, right? The ball could be coming from anywhere on this side and anywhere on this side, and doing anything in between. So the big thing for us is one, finding comfort and finding a spot that you can move freely and cover as much of the catching zone, I guess you'd call it, as possible. So, that's getting with our performance staff and saying, hey, I see some ankle, maybe he's got low back tightness, or there's some hip mobility issues. They're like magic, I tell you. So you tell them something and poof, magically, like in a week, it's done. These guys are incredible. And again, that goes back to the serve to lead. These guys know that they have to get something done. The players, they show up to those assigned times and make sure that they get their work in, and they're very diligent. So, given that there's no physical restrictions, it's more about experience and understanding what is this ball going to do, and the angle that it's going to come in at, and the speed, and then the action. Now, here's a spot where these analytics really are going to help us is with all the TrackMan numbers, the Rapsodo numbers, learning the spin efficiency and the horizontal and the vertical break, understanding what that means to us and how this ball, if this ball's coming in, is it going to go like this? Is it going to go like this? Or is it just going to stay on? We've got to learn all of those things about each guy that we have. I think anybody that's caught has this fear, right? That you're going to either A, miss the ball, or two, get hurt by the ball. And those are probably the most healthy fears that we're going to have in our position, because you have to focus on what the ball is telling us. So for, the evaluation of a guy, it's can we get him into what we have here is like a knee stance, a primary stance where he's just comfortable, and then as many hybrid stances as we can possibly go with, for every situation, for every kind of pitch. Since, very few guys throw exactly the same, especially when you put them on a, 12-man staff, you've got to be able to adjust to everything that they do and know everything that this guy is going to offer and what this guy's going to offer and how it's going to be different. So, the biggest thing for us when it comes to the evaluation of a guy is, all right, again, here's the trends with, catching Jonathan, you can't handle pitches to your glove side, but with Ryan, you catch everything to your glove side just fine. What's the difference? And then we start to look at those things and then try to find a stance that he can handle to not only cover that weaker spot, but then still be able to do the best that he can in the other spots. So, that's more of how we go about each guy individualizing his plan. It's just making sure that he can cover as much as possible throughout the season with who he's going to have to catch. And in the minor leagues, that number is probably exponentially higher than in the major leagues. And you're going to get varying degrees of experience with the pitchers, right? So there's a lot of fear that they have. They're working their way up the system, and maybe you haven't caught him since spring training. All of a sudden, he gets to a new level, and he's scared to death too, right? Or maybe he's mad, or maybe all of a sudden he got a velocity jump that you haven't seen, or a new pitch you haven't seen, and it's learning each guy in that way. So that would be the biggest piece of our evaluation is, okay, how are we getting in positions to be able to do, like you said, catch the ball, and then do it as efficiently and productively as possible. So, I don't think there's an answer. And that goes back to like the question of what can a high school coach or a youth coach do? It's allowing that freedom. I remember, I think every catcher has a guy he struggles with, the same way that he has a pitcher that he struggles with, or he has a pitcher that he owns, right? Things match up to certain pitchers in certain ways. And our job is to not just go like, I can't catch this guy. It's to go like, what in the hell am I going to do to be able to catch this guy well, because I want to help him, right? Again, that goes back to our serve to lead, right? Like taking it upon ourselves to make sure that, we're putting ourselves in the best positions to help the staff win the ball game, and this is where the 10% of the organization can help the best 60%, productively rather than being a hindrance. And, that whole, what we're trying to get at is that you never have the pitchers say, I like to throw to catcher A over catcher B. If we could eliminate that, that means that we've truly done our job as a whole catching core. And because then there's trust and communication and the ability to handle everybody. And I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but that's certainly, if there is an end goal to any of this, that would be it, is that they all throw it to every. It doesn't matter if he's the new guy or the guy that's your best friend.
I love that. I love that goal, and I obviously hit the nail on the head, and I couldn't agree more. I think that, like you said, that is an absolutely fantastic goal to have, because it's like even with BP pitchers, like you have some guys that you really hit really well, and then you've got some guys that you're like, oh, I don't know one thing or another, but yeah, I'm sure that comes up quite a bit. But being able to level the playing field, and wasn't it Maddox who had a guy that was like his guy that he only threw to, and then they had Javi Lopez who just freaking raked, and they had to set him out every 5 days because Maddox didn't like throwing to him. I thought that was the case, but that was whenever I was.
And Eddie Perez, that's who he threw to.
That's right. Yeah, you're trying to eliminate that. So I love that. So if you don't mind, let's go over what game planning looks like for you, and just kind of take us through what a meeting would look like before a series would start.
So, honestly, for me, I stay out of it as much as I can. We have, the developmental coaches get the numbers and they crunch the numbers, and then the guys do a really good job. We do a lot of work on when they're younger, especially with the game calling piece and identifying and the processes. And that's, during this whole quarantine time, that's what we did for the first, 2.5 months or something like that, is we broke down hitters and would have small group meetings over Zoom every week for, I don't know how many weeks. It was a lot of weeks. And that's what they were working on. If we couldn't work on our physical side, we could work on this piece. So getting the stats that we like, and that's just a subjective thing, finding the stats, and we have our video programs that we use that we can filter everything through, and then starting to look at very specific things. And having the guys, giving the guys freedom to figure out, okay, how are you going to get ahead? If you're behind, how are you going to get back in the count? When you get to certain counts, what are we going to probably go with? That's the general, right? And then, how are we going to put them away, etc. But then when we take the second dive, and it's probably the most important dive, is okay, here is pitcher A and pitcher B. Now, okay, you have your general scouting report. How are you going to attack it with, say a righty starter and a lefty reliever? And, that's the piece that I think hopefully we see the biggest gains from going into next season with the minor leaguers, simply because they have started their processes and probably gotten a little bit smarter and more efficient with how they're going to take that information and then hopefully be able to deliver it to their teammates. We look at, there's no secret on what you're looking at. You're looking at who does damage, who swings and misses. If they chase, are they swinging and missing at that chase, or if there's contact or if there's damage? Really, that's probably what you're looking at the very most. Can they handle velo? Can they handle breaking balls? Head, behind, and even in the counts. There's no real magic to what you're looking at. I think it's all about how your pitcher is going to match up to all of those things, and then putting a game plan together, knowing, okay, say this guy's bread and butter is a slider, but this hitter kills sliders. Well, we just got to find where we can place the slider rather than saying like, okay, you can't throw a slider to him. You can only throw fastballs. Well, then the game all of a sudden becomes a little bit easier for everybody else. So, it's that adaptability and understanding how we can go and attack the hitter, even if there are some matchups that aren't perfect. The game's still built around the pitcher winning. So, where can we get some soft contact? Say it is a great matchup for against the pitcher. When you get the soft contact, how can we get him out quicker? How can we just get past him? Like you said earlier, the context is everything. So, say he's the seven hitter, and you have nothing behind him, and this is the one guy that could kill you. Like, hurry up, just get him out of there. Let him get on base. Instead of letting him take up 12 pitches every at bat, and now you're out of the game in the fourth inning. So that's the game planning piece. We certainly have guys that we said, like, hurry up, get him off. He's going to swing, give him something to swing at. There's probably not a damage attached to this pitch, throw that pitch. Or, conversely, like, okay, here's a guy you need to be careful with. With runners in scoring position, all of a sudden he's a better hitter. So if that's the case, let's do this, and this. And this is where matching up the data, matching up the video, matching up your experience, and then matching up that pitcher can really come into play.
I love that. And again, I don't know what that side looks like, but really, really well done. Thank you again for just giving us an inside look as to what that is. And again, it goes back to one, serve to lead, but also you're giving them some freedom within that to learn that, understand that, and have some feel for that, which is going to create better baseball players and better catchers down the line, which is really cool. But let's go into a new segment of the show, and I'm going to say what can we do tomorrow? So let's talk about receiving, blocking, and throwing. And let's just go through the first one, which is receiving. What would be a drill that we can steal from you that we could use tomorrow?
I think it's learning where your pocket is in space. It's knowing where the strike zone is and learning where your pocket is. So if you learn how to create really solid angles with your glove, then the ball can go into the strike zone. So, if the pitch is, say, low and away, and I take it traditionally to where I'm trying to get my thumb, there you go, here. my thumb underneath it, the momentum and the force of the ball can push us away from the strike zone. So it's learning, the angles that we're going to try to get to, and then how can that ball get to the strike zone easiest. So learning how the pocket can be here or the pocket can be here, and you're going to get two completely different actions with the ball. That would definitely be the one thing for anybody who's kind of just working on general receiving that I would recommend. And that's probably the toughest piece when we get to new players, is getting them to understand that where their pocket is in space and where their glove is attached, and how they're not going to miss the ball, especially on the pitch down. The way that we approach the ball is probably slightly different than what they might have been taught. And there's not a lot of trust attached because they think they're going to miss it. And it's just getting that pocket awareness with their angles and their levers. That would be the number one thing that we have to work on. Blocking wise, honestly, I think blocking is the hardest thing to do, / the easiest thing to do. It's the last thing that people learn. It's the experience and seeing the ball and truly recognizing what the ball is doing. But it's honestly the easiest one, because the majority of pitches, if you just close your eyes, are going to bounce and hit you anyways. So, I would talk much more about recognition of spin, speed, and location, mostly location, to figure out then how to get your body down. All you have to do is get a knee down and the ball can hit you and you'll have control of it. Where people get in trouble is they're either way too early and make bad decisions on, we see it all the time. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. The guy starts to go down and then the pitch is up because he assumed things rather than, recognize things. Or conversely, he thinks it's going to travel all the way to him and he gets in a bad position and he's late. So it's more about like putting yourself behind a net, having breaking balls come in, especially, it's probably in the dirt most of the time. And then recognizing a little bit later where the ball is going to be, where it's going to end up, and then being able to get your body there. A block is only part of that action. The whole reason why we block anyways is to keep a runner from advancing, right? So the block is only the first piece. And, then having the balance and the posture that you can then react and get to the ball and then, keep a runner from advancing that base or throw them out is the second piece. So the reaction is the first, reaction recognition, and then making sure that we get there would be the second piece. And I think you have to equally work on both. A lot of times there's blocks, and everybody works on just, killing the ball right in front of them and stuff, but you're not always putting yourself in the best position to then react and throw someone out. A block that's kept 1 inch in front of you and the runner getting a base is a fail. If the runner stays or a runner doesn't advance, that's a success. So if it bounces 10 feet away from you and you're able to get to it and keep that runner from going, that's more of a successful block than the one that we kill right in front of us. It looks good. Throwing, I don't know. Just don't mess it up.
So you can say adding throwing in the blocking.
Anyways. Yeah, honestly, throwing is about, for us, throwing is about getting the ball in your right hand and getting on your right foot, and then it's just a throw. Most throws are messed up by the exchange and where they get the ball or not getting the ball. If you talk to guys when they mess up, it's like, I didn't get a good grip, or I got shoved in a bad place, or my body got put in a bad position when I was just getting the ball. So, we just talk about the clap zone and just getting our hands to wherever our hands naturally come together, which is generally where you clap your hands. So we just try to get, the ball there and get our hand in and out. And if we can just get on our right foot, then it just becomes a regular throw. So, that's that's the piece that is the hard part about throwing, is just making sure we just get to hear. And all of our drills, the drills that we do, probably other than receiving, because receiving is about the experience of getting all of that. But our block and our throws are all meant to be pieces where it's kind of built before or built after where most people kind of mess up. So they can take a drill if they're having trouble and put it in their pregame routine before they go and play. So that's kind of how our drills are built out for the guys.
I like that. Again, thank you. I've been trying to add some just practical drills without drilling everybody to death, but I like the idea of just one or two things that we can steal from you and add that are simple enough that we can add tomorrow. But let's talk a little bit about, what you've learned during this time, or just lately, what you're digging into, what you're researching. What's something that you've learned lately that's gotten you really excited?
The game calling, that's a huge piece for us, and I think we've grown it quite a bit over this time. Streamlining how we can get guys who generally haven't, had a lot of experience in the planning and then the application. I would say that's the first thing that I'm going after. Now working, I was telling you earlier, I've got to work with our players that have either been sick or rehabbing now, and being able to diversify a little bit out of the catching realm. I haven't got to look at pitchers the way that I've got to see them in the last few weeks, and working with some outfielders, getting them ready to go back to LA, and that's been a lot of fun. So trying to get back on that and ask some questions about what I should be looking for and how I should be reporting it. So looking at it in a little bit different way out of the realm that I'm in, and just picked up a new book actually. It's called Choose Love, Not Fear. It's written by Gary Heil and Ryan Heil, who I worked with Gary at NPA with Tom House, and his son was one of our pitchers. So I just got this book. I'm going to dive into that later today. It's about leadership and culture, and built probably a little bit stronger in every organization, and especially now that we have such little contact with the players. I'm hoping that we can get back to that normal way of going about it in our groups. But if we can't, we've got to be able to keep these guys engaged and get them ready to go compete.
Really good. Sorry, I forgot to mention, this is kind of a lightning section, so if I don't add a lot of commentary to it, I just honestly want to know your thoughts. But what is something that the best coaches that you've ever been around, what's something that they do different? What set them apart?
They're innovative. They push and question conventional wisdoms.
Oh, really good. I love that. You don't have to be short and succinct. I'm not going to add a lot of commentary.
No, I mean, that was
fantastic.
that would be it.
I love that. What is something that you do with the catchers, or something that is a hit as far as drills go? Like if you said, "Hey guys, we're going to do this tomorrow," they just explode with excitement. Like what would that be?
I can tell you it is not our cutter. That would be the one. That's our general test. We have about a 95 mile an hour cutter that we like to use.
Ouch.
That is the test to see if they can put everything together. I would say they really enjoy when I say, "Hey, go inside, get off your feet." That would probably be what they enjoy most. Definitely subscribe to less is more. And we certainly will never, put more on their plate than they already have. So I think when we recognize that they don't need to do any more work, and they've done a great job, especially in spring training or instructional league, and it's get out of here, go sit down, go get in the air conditioning for a little while. That's probably what they enjoy most when we say that.
Oh, I can imagine. What? Yeah, I like that a lot. What is something that you want to try
Think may go unnoticed.
that you think may go unnoticed by some people, but you think that it's important? So the example I give is every time a catcher goes and gets behind the plate, he always shakes the umpire's hand. Maybe not this year, but it tells him his name, yes sir, and then they move on. But it's just something that builds that connection. Is there anything like that, or anything that you do that may go unnoticed that we can start to do with our players that's important?
That's a great question. I would say the team building within our group, getting them to communicate better is the key, because if we can get them to communicate better, then it's only going to help the team. The environment is always competitive, but creating really strong dudes that will help each other out, even at their own expense, I would say that would be the piece. If you can get your 2 to 3 catchers to communicate and trust each other and help each other out and fight for each other, then I would think that's probably the biggest win out of our position.
Cool. I got 2 more for you.
Sure.
Anything that you see that is just any trends that you find disheartening that you would like to see changed?
Twitter. I'll just leave it there.
Okay. All right. So finally, I guess that won't be an answer to this next question, which are some of your favorite books and resources. So if you don't mind, can you give us just, if you could buy every one of our listeners 1 or 2 books, or you could put them in touch with this person, or you could have them enroll in this course, what would those things be?
Wow. I have a million books. You know what? Off the top of my head, I don't know. I think just reading, right? Reading and getting outside of what is comfortable for you, as far as the topics. Anything in leadership, I'm in on. I like a lot of nonfiction leadership stuff, rather than just anecdotal, jargon. I'll read everything, just trying to pull a piece, and it's usually something with service and leadership. That's where I'll go with it. As far as resources, man, I just try to talk to everyone, unapologetically. Like, I hope that I don't have a huge ego in this, right? And ask a lot of questions, because there is a lot of experiences that every one of us have. So whether, and I'm not just talking about within baseball. I think, I talk to Uber drivers a lot when I'm going to the airport on trips, and everyone has a different story of what they do, and I ask for the challenges that they face, because generally people are dealing with people, and how can you do this, or here's a challenge that I've had with a group of people. How can you relate? I would say that's the biggest thing for me, is to not fight the urge of the ego and saying, like, well, I'm right and this is the way to do it. I mean, I can personally say that the way that we do things around here is the way that we do things around here. If I were with a different group, maybe those things are different and the values are different. So there's not a right or a wrong attached to it, as far as I'm concerned. It's just how you do things within your organization or your group. So there's things within the catching realm that I personally agree with or disagree with, but I also have the greater good of our organization in mind. So maybe there's some things that I'm not as comfortable with that I need to become comfortable with, and it's not saying that it's right or wrong, and certainly how we go about, say, the targeting with our pitching staff. maybe that does hurt our receiving in certain ways, but it also maybe, helps the pitchers, to where another organization will say, we don't care about the target, put the glove on the ground and do whatever because, X, Y, and Z. I'm not saying that we're right and they're wrong, or they're right and we're wrong, just the way that we do it. So I don't feel that there should be an ego in that. It's just, this is how you kind of go about things, um, and there's no right or wrong. And I think we all can take every one of those situations and say, okay, well, I could use this in this situation, or I could use it in that situation. And then it benefits you rather than, becomes this like pissing contest on who's right and wrong.
That's really good. And again, I like to hear, I really like the depth of asking other people the challenges that they face. I think that's a really good question to ask. And I was thinking to myself, well, if that was the first question that you asked, it may be slightly awkward, but the more you get to know somebody, I think that that's something that you can get to their heart and serve and lead them. I may be stealing that from you, by the way. And so I am going to link your Twitter account, which you so eloquently stated that you love Twitter so much. I'm going to link that in the show notes. I'm also going to link your website. And so those would be also two other good resources to reach out to just see some different things that we couldn't get to today. But I'm going to open up the mic for you and just kind of let you roll. Is there anything else that you'd like to tell our listeners before you go?
I just think, first, thank you for having me. This has been great. I never shy away from talking about catching because it's what I do on a daily basis, and it's truly what I love about baseball. We have the opportunity, like I said earlier, for a small group to influence the best group, which is the pitchers, and with the opportunity to win baseball games. And as I hope everyone gets to do at some point is, win championships, because it's good for everyone if there is some parity and there is some, spreading of the wealth as far as winning goes, because I think winning breeds success in other things. But our game is in a great place, I think, because you've got the best athletes playing it right now. And, our position, although I don't think has ever been better, because there is much more focus on all the different ways that guys can help. And again, it goes back to the service part. But if we can get more kids involved in understanding why being a catcher is so much fun, rather than it's tough, it's hot, it sucks when I get hit by a ball, right? That's what we lose guys to sometimes. And maybe they're hitting or something may suffer, but it just takes a stronger man, as far as I'm concerned, to be able to have success back here.